My next guest is a former Green Beret who actually trained with the IDF and now is running as a Republican for Virginia's congressional 7th Congressional District, Derrick Anderson. So last time, so we had Yesli Vega. I went down there and spoke on her behalf. You guys actually ran a primary together, but if I remember, it was very civil. She beat you the first time. Now you're running the second time. But Abigail Spanberger's vacating the seat this time.
Yeah, so there was an article that came out a couple months, probably about a month or two ago, that said that there was reports that Spanberger is not running for re-election. I haven't seen her comment on it. I think there's been some reports that have reached out to her about it, so she hasn't publicly said anything yet. But yeah, I ran last cycle. I was the only candidate in the race that wasn't an elected official. So we did very well. We were very pleased with our campaign moving forward. And I decided, to jump back in again. One of the original reasons why I decided to run in the first place was watching the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan based on the Biden administration. I lost several of my guys in Afghanistan. So seeing how that happened really put a fire in my belly. And that made me want to jump in and represent the people that raised me. The 7th Congressional District is my home. That's where my family, that's where I grew up the first 20 years of my life, working at my mom's restaurant. So we're really excited about the campaign moving forward. We've got a lot of great things going on.
All right, of course, I want to talk about your campaign, but real quick, I got a Green Beret here who's trained with the IDF. We had a Black Hawk pilot earlier in the program talking about the air superiority and the inability to use some of that air superiority with this tunnel network that Hamas has created underneath schools, hospitals, and apartment buildings. They're using human shields. What does it mean for the IDF if they get the go-ahead for a ground invasion of Gaza City? And I said to Colonel Darren Gwab early in the program, a lot of veterans say that the movie Black Hawk Down was spot on, which shows what can happen when U.S. forces find themselves bogged down in a foreign nation street-to-street fighting.
Yeah, and the three things that I see that are going to be of concern, and to your point you made earlier, look, right now the Israelis are just pounding at Gaza, right? They're softening the target that is Gaza so they can prepare for a ground force. I know that there's been some reports out there that they've wanted to move in on the ground earlier, but there was some weather constraints. And like we were mentioning, they want air superiority. If weather is red, they can't fly. So my assumption is that they're waiting for the weather to clear up. But the three things that really, I think the Israelis are going to be focusing on is, one, the Palestinian civilians, right? We just saw some reports come out recently about the hospital being bombed. We know that the Hamas will fight from, and it's something that I saw when I was in Afghanistan and Iraq. They will fight from schools, hospitals, places where civilians are at. And we've also seen that that Hamas has been willing to block roads to prevent the Palestinian civilians to move south out of the north, where it's most likely that the IDF are going to start moving. That's going to be their frontal attack. Secondly is intelligence. These Hamas terrorists are definitely going to be running around throughout these tunnels. Intelligence is going to be changing by the minute. So it would be my prediction that any ground assault into Gaza is going to be slow and methodical. They're going to go house to house, building to building. And more importantly, and this gets to my third point, is because of the tunnel systems. When we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, you'd clear a house, then you move on to the next house, you move on to the next house. The Israelis have really, really good intelligence, and they have really good training on navigating these tunnel systems. I personally have worked with those Israeli forces that work in the tunnels. But the layer that is different this time around is the hostages, right? I believe it's roughly 200 hostages right now that Hamas has. And so in the past, Israel, the IDF and their special operations, they'll go clear a tunnel. They'll put explosives in it to destroy it, to kill the terrorists and destroy the tunnel. This time around, it brings another layer that there could potentially be hostages in there, and very likely that these hostages are going to be separated throughout Gaza in these tunnel systems.
It is frightening. I want to get onto your campaign. I watched a documentary on the tunnel rats of Vietnam, and that's just fighting in it. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. All right, so let's talk about your campaign. I have one question I ask every candidate who comes on this program or my SiriusXM radio program, and it goes like this. Are you a vote to cut the spending? And when I say that, we always hear Republicans and Democrats say they cut the proposed budget. Proposed spending is meaningless. Saying that if you spent $80 million on a program last year, you propose to spend $120 million this year, you only spend $100 or you're budgeting $100, you say, we cut the budget for this year by $20 million. No, that's not a $20 million cut. It's a $20 million increase from the year before. So are you a vote to actually cut the spending?
Yeah, and this is one of the things I always analyze it or analogize it to the military, right? I saw this as a problem when I was a team leader, when I was a special forces team leader, and it's not the right answer. And I saw it happen all the time is at the end of a fiscal year, the year before you plan, right? You'd plan and say, we're going to get $1 million per team, right? And as the year moves forward, things change, the budget changes, spending changes, the mission changes. And then it comes up to the fiscal year in September, and you might have spent half of that or 3/4 of that. And what I always saw was the commanders would always come out and say, you need to spend the rest of that money. Why? Because when they go put in their budget for the next year, they want to increase that budget. And if you didn't spend what you did beforehand, then you have to, then you effectively have cut the budget. And so, yeah, I do want to cut the budget. I think it's important. And we see it in the 7th Congressional District every day. The cost of inflation, the cost of goods, things like that have just gotten out of control. Crime's out of control. We're seeing the southern border be infiltrated. There's been reports over the last few days of terrorists that are still trying to come over the border while everything is going on in Israel and in the Gaza. So, yeah, absolutely. I think we do necessarily have to cut the budget for sure.
Isn't that this is stupid thinking. We have our military securing other nations' borders. The Border Patrol is picking up people on the terror watch list. We have no idea where these people are coming from and where they're going in our country. Right now we saw the Hamas use hang gliders to go in and start killing innocent civilians. Would it surprise anyone if Hamas or Hezbollah has cells ready to activate here in the U.S.?
No, and it's something that we used to say in the military all the time is when your guard's down, that's when you're most likely to get hit, right? Complacency is always a killer. And I think right now what we're seeing, and I want to note too, which is kind of fascinating to me, if you look at what's going on in Gaza, Israelis are openly telling the Palestinians to move to the south, right? Saying, move to the south, we're about to start our ground force into the north. And Egypt's telling the Palestinians, no, you're not coming into Egypt. And I find it remarkable that Egypt is not letting Palestinians come in because they want a secure border and they want to know who's coming through the border. While at the same token, we see the Biden administration and how they're handling our current border is complete opposite. It's very, very alarming. And I definitely think that we as a society, we as people need to watch out for our neighbors, watch out for our family members, because, what we're seeing over in Gaza and in Israel right now, we don't want to see it here in America.
And King Abdullah said, nope, we're not opening our borders in Jordan either. And the Israelis are taking pains to not harm civilians. I got to leave it there. We'll get you back. We'll do straight campaign stuff next time.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right.